Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Dragon Eclipse, which is brought to you by Awakened Realms. It's for 1 to 2 players, ages 12 and up, and games generally run about 60 to 120 minutes. Enter a magical world of mythical beasts and ancient dragons. Uncover the secrets of the eclipse that changed everything, and discover the dangerous and treacherous world that awaits you. You will take the role of tamers, befriending and training creatures. Each scenario is divided into 2 interconnected parts, combat and adventure. You explore the world and progress the story during the adventure and encounter wild creatures during the combat. The world you will explore is vivid and immersive, filled with majestic and unique creatures you can battle, tame, catch, and train. Each creature has a unique deck of cards you can use in combat and special abilities offering endless tactical possibilities to master. This is an epic choose-your-own adventure as you move through this world and the story unfolds, and where your choices will dictate the outcome. So yes, this is a tactical strategy game, but also a choose-your-own adventure as you move through this world, which I was a huge fan of the choose-your-own adventure books, and this game has that in spades, which I loved so much. Now, you're going to be battling an arena, trying to tame and acquire creatures. Yes, that may sound familiar, something like Pokemon, but it is very different. They give you some really nice play with the different cards and how you can put combos together and how you put your decks together as you acquire more creatures through the course of play. Now, I got to experience the first 2 scenarios only, but there's going to be like 15 scenarios with like 30 different maps that you can tap into, and it will encompass, if you go through the whole campaign, something like 30 to 40 hours. And as you acquire creatures in this game, or tame them, you'll be adding them to your creature study. You have a whole study on creatures, adding them to the book and so forth. But all their cards and various things about them will be put into your creature tray, your box of creatures, so to say, which is really handy. And when you go into battle, in general, you're going to be able to add and use whatever creatures you want, whatever's available to you. But in this first scenario, this is really kind of a learning scenario. So I'm just going to show you the basics of everything in this game, because I really don't want to spoil even the tutorial. I don't want to spoil any of the story. However, I will give you a couple story bits, and it is really engaging as you move through it. Now, as you move through the scenarios, you're going to have individual scenario booklets that have all the setup, all the story bits as you choose your path through the story. And you know what? Most of the setup is here, I should say. When you battle some of the creatures, there will be setup for those as well as you'll have arena effects, which will have setup as well. So it just depends on where you are in the story and what you're going to be doing. And just to give you a little tidbit of what it's like when you kick off the story for the scenario 1, Careburg, you've always loved this city, perched atop a barren hill from which you can admire a scenic vista of old forests, winding merchant roads, and low rocky hills. Then you look at all those wind turbines connected to the water pumps and forges. You love the sound they make a little less, but they make you proud, so you forgive all the noise. You are one of the few people responsible for making sure all this works properly. There are engineers who supervise the steel and brass, and there are tamers like you, people who train and care for the creatures that support the whole structure. You check on one of the creatures that controls the airflow through windmills and turbines, the Wind Razor. It's a timid creature possessing tremendous power and utters a pleasant sound when it sees you. Tomorrow you will train and play with it, as well as several other creatures, but today both you and it have work to do. You spend some time with the Wind Razor, showing it how to use its powers more efficiently and give the creature a little treat. Soon the wind flowing through the city accelerates and the turbines spin a little faster. So that intro will lead you into the story, the world that you'll be playing in that particular scenario. Now, there may be some setup there as well that you'll need to be mindful of, grabbing the different bits and so forth that it calls for, and then you're ready to begin, and you're going to be reading through several things which might lead you to battle right away. So before we jump into the maps and how it works to navigate the world, let's take a look at a battle. Now, as you encounter story bits that lead to combat, there'll be several things to set up. Obviously, there's going to be story around what's happening and why you're battling, but there's several things that you will always have to do, like prepare the combat area, get your creatures ready. Now, based on which ones you've tamed, you can put into play. I went with the ice creature. There's a fire creature as well, which was interesting, but I really like the ice. And then you're going to prepare the enemy. Now, there might be other setup around this based on what you're doing and where you are in the story, but there's this arena effects card that will get put into play. based on what you're doing in the scenario. This will potentially have some rules around it, but will also contain the aftermath, where you need to go in the story based on winning or losing. So this card is key to have in play. And then for your character, you have your main character cards, as well as the element. The element card that the character is will be put into play, and these are additional actions that you're going to be able to take before or after you play your cards. So you'll have to acquire the elements, and when you pick up cards and use them, you will get elements based on where it is in the row, and as you pick up cards, they slide down and more come in and so forth. And then once you run out, you just shuffle and re-deal cards. So it really depended on what actions are available around the cards based on which element your creature is. So that's pretty interesting effect as well. And those cards. So when you pick up a card, based on where it is in that slot, you'll add those many elements to your character, and you can just spend them later. You can even save them and so forth. But the thing here is that you'll discard cards, and generally you're going to be playing one card unless it calls for you to activate another card in the row based on what's happening with the specifics of the card that you've chosen to use. Now, you have so many different things around your character that you can use, like attacks, obviously, and all those stats are on your character card as well as the enemy card, so you know exactly what's what. So you've got basically, if you have shields available, what your health is, what your attack is, and what your move is. So those are a lot of the things you're going to be using as extra effects too, and cards call those keywords out, like attack, so you know exactly how much damage you'll do. And we have markers to keep track of all the damage and so forth. But that's the key thing. And really, you know, the cards that get put into play are really going to just dictate what you're doing. So you have to be very choosy about which cards you use and how you engage in this battle. Now, I believe they're going to have standees for the different characters, but here they gave me the amazing miniatures. This is Awakened Realms after all. These are phenomenal. It'll give you your starting position for them, and depending on the scenario, again, you might be able to pick where they go, but there'll be tokens in play that are going to relate to the enemy perhaps, or what you need to pick up or what you need to deal with. In this case, there's some tornado or winds that go along with the Wind Razor. So this Wind Razor that you met in the introduction went a little crazy, and we have to kind of stop them. Now, usually when you're in battles, you have creatures that you can tame. So not for this particular one in this opening scenario. This is really just learn how to battle. But in other creatures that you'll find later, you'll find that you'll have a taming card, and you'll just mark off the different requirements. And once you do, that's one of the ways to win the battle, if you can tame the creature, which is fantastic. Just acquiring creatures is a ton of fun in this game overall. So I like that aspect a lot. Now, for the enemies that you're going to be dealing with, they're going to obviously have their own standard card as well. Just like you have your standard card and your special ability card, but they have their own attack ability cards as well. And you have this deck of cards, and it really is just symbols that you'll put together based on the setup and which creature that is in play. And they have a special ability that activates after a certain point. And it will happen quite frequently, because they'll attack, they'll pull a card out, and once it hits that, in this case, the third slot, they'll activate their special ability. So these cards don't really do anything other than the symbols, and you shuffle them up, and they'll just come out and say enemy attack. And basically that's their attack against you, following the same type of rules that you do. So for this one, he attacks with a 2. So he'll do 2 damage to you unless you can defend it in some way with cards that you have in play. Oh, and it is definitely worth mentioning that the symbols also relate to the fact that they do something different when that symbol comes up. So you'll see here that there's like an attack of +2 or a rush attack, or they might do something special with those different symbols on the attack cards that get put into play. So every time they attack or they activate, something different may happen based on the symbol of the attack cards. And the top card of the enemy deck will always show what their next activation is going to be, so you know what we're going to be doing on their turn. Also, there are fatigue cards that could come into your hand based on numerous things that happen in the battle or during it and so forth, but these just really dirty up your deck. So when you deal out cards to your row, it may just be a know-nothing card that does nothing, and it helps you in no way, obviously. So there are ways to get rid of fatigue cards as well, but they can slow you down for sure. One last look at your character deck. Now, there are some generic cards here that can be used between all the different creatures, but there are ones obviously specific too, but they all do very different things, and really it's all self-explanatory on the card and how you use them. Now, the other key thing though is acquiring those elements and saving them to use them at key times, because you can use those special actions on the element card as well as your special ability, really bringing the hammer at times. Once the battle is over, then you'll flip over this arena effect card and you'll read the next story bit based on winning or losing or whatever it calls for. In this particular case, you have another nice story bit. We go to script 26 within the book, and it says the wind creature stops fighting, and you use this occasion to approach it and place your hand on its semi-corporeal arm. It looks into your eyes and lets out a poignant wail. It suddenly cowers in shame and rushes behind the turbine, wedging its flexible body into a dark crevice. It seems the crisis is averted for now. And based on that, you'll have some new cards that you're going to be able to add, which is fantastic. So all the battles are going to have very different things that happen, and you might get some rewards, you might get all kinds of different things based on what the story calls for, which is really nice. So those things really come into play, and then you move back to the main adventure and you go back to your map. And in this particular battle, you go back to script 2, which then gives you some more info about what's going on and shows that how tired you are. You're going to gain one of these fatigue cards that we talked about, and you're going to gain silver, and you're going to go to map 1. And in reading further, you'll discover that you'll put secret card 13 in the event spot, as well as giving you a timer of 3. All the maps are going to have timers, and based on where you visit the different areas, may advance that timer, getting you ever closer to that event or whatever might be going on in that particular area or maps. Now, again, there's several maps that you're going to be going through, and I just had a handful to look at in this particular 2-scenario adventure. It was really well done, and this is where the choose your own adventure part comes into play. Now, there's several key things about these maps. First, you have the timer at the top, and several different scripts and areas you go through the adventure are going to advance the time, and we'll take a look at one of those. Also, you'll see there's books in the different areas on the map, and you'll read that script and then do what it says. And based on where you go, things might change dramatically. There are adventure slots as well, and you'll be placing a token there, A or B side, based on what the story tells you to do and what's happening in that environment. And the other neat thing about maps is the fact that there may be hidden numbers. So you do want to look at these maps really closely, because it may lead to additional story bits, and they're usually real faint on the map and you try to locate them. In the case of this map 1, we have a 13 that we can go to in the scripts and see what happens. I'm not going to spoil that one though. And in general, you have item cards. It may, through the course of the story, you may draw an item card, and you'll be able to keep up to 4. And if you get more than that, you'll have to make some tough choices about what to keep of these items and so forth, but they're going to help you throughout the adventure. Now, item cards are also used for making some interesting decisions. So in this example, we're trying to fix the machine that's been broken, and you're going to be running a series of checks here. So you're going to be flipping over item cards and using the number value on them, trying to acquire a certain number to see a certain outcome. So you'll see that there's a grid in the scenario book. It'll be like 5, 6, 7, and 8 potentially, and it's going to give you different results, different story elements you go to, different things will happen, as well as half moons. So on these cards, you'll see there's a half moon symbol, and based on how many of those come up, it might advance the time and trigger that event card that was put into play. Or, it might do any number of things. You might get damage as well based on those different types of actions that you're performing. And you want to try to avoid, so it is a push your luck element. There are no dice in this game. Instead, you're using cards and using their values in order to achieve whatever the particular story elements call for. So those are really the basics. You are advancing the story, multiple paths, multiple story paths, which is one of my favorite aspects here. And the battles work so well, so seamlessly. And as you try to acquire and tame more creatures that can help you and aid you down the road as you try to do more and more things. And I really like this aspect of really taking a close look at the map, trying to find the hidden numbers, things that can lead you down dark paths perhaps, but maybe some really interesting benefits as well. And the story is super rich and engaging, and you really do feel like you are part of the story. Alright folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form, so keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now with that said, I'm not generally a solo player, and this experience with this game was just something tremendous, something unique and different. I really found it engaging from the story aspect to the battles, back and forth with that, and of course, beautiful artwork, amazing miniatures in this game, and I can't wait to see more of the story. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like something of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it from me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.